Hey everyone, it's the next day and we're heading north, maybe another 5 hours or so, even further into the Canadian wilderness. Today we're going to be going just maybe an hour or two beyond a town called Otter Rapids. There's a hydro generating plant there. That's mainly all there is there. We just went to a small town which appears to be the last place we were able to fill up with fuel. So we're going to go no further than half a tank out here. We're hoping to find a little dead-end logging road we can pull down and just pull it out into the woods a little bit, set up a hot tent for the night and camp out here. We are far enough north that there is a risk of polar bears, but pretty uncommon in the area, so I don't think we'll have to worry about them. The temperature is now cold enough where road salt is almost ineffective, so they're just putting down some sand around the corners, you see? Places that you're likely to slip. They're just sanding around the corners, trying not to use up too much of it, it looks like. This is very rural, not too many vehicles come down here. Every vehicle that does come down here makes a dust storm and it blows it all off the road. Behind me it's very dusty, it looks like, but it's just the snow drifting from the wind I'm making. The forest is very different up here. Certain areas look very scraggly, which looks really cool. Lots of swamps, lots of beaver lodges we've been going by. The trees up here are a lot shorter, much shorter growing season. We're now almost about 11 hours north of Toronto. Second day of driving. We slept last night at that tiny little hotel I showed a little bit of. Not too bad. We just stopped at a gas station and got a few snacks to eat at a much inflated price because it's the middle of nowhere and they have to truck it out here. Maybe next winter I want to bring the truck up here and we just went by another logging road. They plowed it in maybe 50 feet from the main road, so you can park there if you want to. You can take snowmobiles down all the unplowed logging roads, and that's just parking for camping or whatever you want to do out here in the wilderness. What's the name of the wilderness again?
Oriel Forest.
And we're going to be going to the Barron forest, which means the trees are a lot more scraggly. There's a lot more swamps and marshes up here. There's a lot of migratory bird sanctuaries if you look at the map. And also we're going to be very close to the ocean. Don't think we're going to go all the way to it. Don't think we have enough time in the day before we run out of sunlight.
Maybe a couple hours away from Hudson's Bay.
Alright. I'm feeling a lot of frost heaving right now. About an hour ago we were following the high tension power lines coming from the hydro station for a while. Many of those giant towers holding up the power lines were very crooked and they had stabilizing cables holding on to them. I don't know if that's a permanent fix or until the spring, but some of the towers were noticeably very crooked from the frost heaving. And right now, all these bumps are running over. The road's very crooked because it's cold enough that the road freezes down to the water table. When the water freezes, it expands, pushing up unevenly. And as we drive north now, the snow is actually quickly getting a little deeper, which is cool. We don't have the snowshoes, but we should be fine with our boots. We're just going to walk out a little bit from one of the rural logging roads. And if we don't find a place, we can backtrack to these areas before sundown. Brought a hot tent. It'll be pretty easy to set that up in the snow. Just us walking around a little bit, setting the tent up should pack it down enough to camp for the night. We'll cut up a little bit of firewood for the hot tent stove, just enough to cook dinner. And we have a propane heater we'll run throughout the night since the stove won't be able to run throughout the night like that. We just went by another little parking area. There's a snowmobile trail. Doesn't look like anyone's been on it. We might not pass a car for quite a while. I think the forest up here is very interesting, how skinny the trees grow. might be close together like this just because of the climate, or maybe it's because it was recently logged and they like to replant them closer together to get more out of the harvest the next time around. Everything you see is balsam fir trees. There's a bunch of permanent frost heave signs. Sometimes you come across a frost heave that's so bad you'll hit the stop blocks on the vehicle, which means the springs, the shocks completely compress. The road's not too slippery. Sometimes if there's a lot of frost heaves, you want to drive a little slower because of it. Camera's been down at that worse angle. I think the frost heave did that without me noticing. We saw 2 moose last night, which was cool. Moose aren't too common to see in the winter. They usually hunker down a lot. Springtime is when I've noticed they're most active. And here's some vehicles that have been definitely parked there overnight. They're covered in snow. They're out on the snowmobile trails, probably camping somewhere. I want to go ahead and rent a snowmobile. We can pull one of the sleds and go camping with that. Doesn't make sense to me to go and buy one. Costs too much maintenance and registration for the amount of time I would use it. I'd rather just snowshoe and pull my way into the woods than that. I think next year I want to drive my truck up here and I'll get some wheel spacers so I can use tire chains. I want to take some of the ice roads that the big rigs use further north. There's a lot of areas they log, but they can only log them when it's cold enough to use ice roads, because a lot of these northern areas, they're just too muddy, too marshy, so they have to use ice roads. They can drive across frozen ponds and lakes. Northern Canada is very beautiful if you look at it on Google Maps. There's just hundreds, probably tens of thousands of teeny little ponds everywhere, because the bedrock is so shallow it just holds water everywhere. That's why there's swamps everywhere. Makes it look really pretty. As we drive around, we're just passing thousands of little beaver ponds. There's definitely hundreds of thousands of them out in the woods here, and that's why it's so swampy. The beavers are holding it up. That's how all of North America used to be before humans took it over. All little beaver ponds, but then humans drain them to dry out the soil and build. And that's when the forest starts to become weaker without all that water, less drought tolerant. Up here all the trees seem to be very green because of all the beaver swamps holding back all that water reserve. So that's when beavers come in handy. They hold back all the water, making it marshy and swampy, holding back water, so when there's not rain and there's a lot of drought, the forest still has water. Then after a typical dry summer, all those half-empty beaver ponds act as retention and they prevent flooding. Or after the winter, the groundwater's starting to run slow, so when the spring thaw comes, you got a lot of retention to hold it back so it doesn't flood severely. The forest is starting to look really pretty now that the snow's picking up. Just wanted to show a little bit of the road. I'll end the vlog now, and eventually I'll upload a camping video of this area. See what we find. I want to come up here again in the summertime when every logging road is passable. Try to go as far north as we can in the summer. Although I feel like we might be able to actually drive further north in the winter with the ice roads. So maybe next year I'll get wheel spacers, which are required for me to put the chains on my truck. Because right now I'm just running the studded tires, and I'm not driving the truck right now. These roads aren't too slippery. Here we are back to some high tension power lines. The other ones were actual towers with 4 feet. These ones only have 1 foot and they're stabilized with cables that are a bit different up here. I wonder if that's because it's just harder to build their foundations, or I assume these kind of towers are much cheaper for the middle of nowhere. We could also probably camp underneath the power lines somewhere someday, although that's not good for your health to be under those for a long time. That's why you never or very rarely ever see a building underneath them. It can cause health problems living under the power lines. Believe it or not, if you got some muddy soil that's conductive under them, you can bury an incandescent light bulb and it'll actually glow under some of those powerful power lines because of so much energy in the air. There's actual YouTube videos of that if you want to look that up. You bury a fluorescent tube halfway in the ground, usually moist soil so it can ground correctly, and then it'll glow at night. There's so much power in the air underneath those things. That's why it's bad for your health. It's like being in an X-ray machine for a very long time if you spend a lot of time under there. That's why you can't build houses under power lines. Too much of an electromagnetic field coming off those powerful ones. Looks like the camera's coming back up a little from the bumps. Very pretty up here. The majority of the forest is balsam fir. I see tamarack trees, which are the only pine tree that loses its needles, the ones that appear to be dead. I'm also seeing some aspen trees, but they definitely don't grow as tall up here. Maybe in the summer we'll take a trip out to the tundra area where it's just grass that grows. But there's not too many roads that go up that far. There are a couple though that we'll try. We just went by a bunch of parking lots right there for more snowmobiling. But I like how a lot of logging roads, they plowed them in just a little bit so you can use them as parking. We'll find one without anyone at it and set up camp. But it's still not even noon yet. We'll keep driving north a couple more hours. Hopefully the trees will get even shorter. I guess it's not really that we're far north, it's the quality of the soil. We've been going by some areas that are swampy, and that prevents the trees from growing big. It stunts their growth. Also, if there's not a lot of soil, it stunts their growth. Right here, they're actually becoming a little tall again like we have in Maine. Even though we're hundreds of miles in altitude above Maine. Many hundreds of miles in altitude above Maine. But it's all about the quality of the soil, not necessarily even elevation. We're much further down in elevation than Maine, where I live, but we're a lot further north. But it depends on the trees and quality of soil, because I've been to places out west that are 1,200, no, I don't think that high, but maybe 10,000 feet above sea level. They still have trees, just a different type of tree that's been able to evolve to be in that condition. Because I noticed on my trip out west, trees grow at a much further elevation than they do in Maine. In Maine, they don't seem to grow more than 4,000 feet above sea level, and it's probably just the quality of the soil. Maybe the wind is too strong, because when you climb things like Mount Washington or Mount Katahdin, the trees up there are all slanted and crooked like the wind, so they don't catch it as easily. Lots of frost heaving here, but the road you see is built high up from the rest of the forest. That's to hopefully drain it out. Is this a road coming up? Nope. Lots of snowmobile tracks under the power lines.